Brother and sister, a woman protected by God carries within her a gift that not be explained by natural means, spiritual discernment. This isn't just intuition or a gut feeling. It's something deeper, more divine. It's the ability to sense what the eyes cannot see and the ears cannot hear. It's a whisper from the Holy Spirit, warning her, guiding her, shielding her from paths that would lead to pain. She may not always understand why she feels uneasy in certain places or around certain people, but that inner check in her spirit tells her, this isn't right, and she listens. Not because she's afraid, but because she's aware that her protection begins with obedience. Discernment doesn't always make sense to others. In fact, people might call her paranoid, overly cautious, or even judgmental. But what they don't see is how many traps she's avoided because she obeyed that quiet nudge from God. She's the type of woman who can sit in a room full of smiling faces and still know which one carries a hidden agenda. She can feel the tension in the atmosphere when something dark is trying to disguise itself in light. She can hear the difference between words meant to flatter and words birthed in truth. And she doesn't need evidence to trust what the Spirit is showing her, because she knows that spiritual things are spiritually discerned. What makes this kind of discernment so powerful is that it protects her before damage is done. God doesn't wait for her to be broken to begin speaking. He warns her before she enters the wrong relationship. He highlights the red flags early on. He gives her dreams, visions, and an unrest that won't go away until she backs away from danger. Sometimes it comes through a scripture she reads. Sometimes through a sermon or a song. And sometimes it's just that weight in her chest that won't let her move forward until she takes a step back. She doesn't always know what's wrong, but she knows something is, and that's enough. A woman with this level of spiritual clarity doesn't live on the surface. She's not easily distracted by charm or impressed by charisma. She doesn't get caught up in appearances because she knows that the enemy often disguises himself as an angel of light. Evil people don't approach her with horns and fangs. They come with kind words, good intentions, and false light. But her spirit isn't fooled. She doesn't just listen to what people say. She senses the spirit behind their words. She can feel when someone is operating from a place of manipulation, jealousy, or hidden motives, even when they're smiling in her face. That kind of insight makes her dangerous to evil people. They don't understand how she sees through them, how she avoids their traps, how she never quite falls into the mess they try to pull her into. But it's not her. It's the Spirit of God in her. She's not suspicious. She's spiritually alert. She's not fearful. She's covered. And because she walks closely with God, she sees what others miss. She hears what others ignore. She senses what others overlook. And while others are blindsided by betrayal, she's already taken a step back, already prayed, already guarded her heart. Discernment isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the decision to leave early, to say no when everyone else says yes, to pass on a friendship that looks perfect on paper, to walk away from an opportunity that feels rushed. She doesn't always explain her choices because she doesn't owe anyone an explanation for what God has revealed to her spirit. What looks like caution to others is really obedience to the whisper of God. It's not that she sees more than others. It's that she listens more. She pays attention. She prays about everything. And in doing so, she stays one step ahead of the traps the enemy tries to set. There's a kind of protection that doesn't feel like protection at first. It feels like loss, like confusion, like unanswered prayer. It shows up in closed doors, missed opportunities, sudden goodbyes, and relationships that end without closure. But for a woman protected by God, rejection is often divine. It's not punishment, it's preservation. What looks like someone walking away is really God pulling her out of something that would have wounded her spirit. What seems like a disappointment is actually a detour. And what she thought was a perfect fit was just a distraction sent to slow her down. God doesn't always explain why he removes certain people or shuts certain doors. He just does it. And while others may chase after what's been lost, a woman who knows she's covered by God learns to trust the silence. She may cry. She may question. But somewhere deep down, she senses it wasn't right. Even if she couldn't see the danger, God did. He saw the manipulation before it showed. He saw the betrayal before it happened. He saw the conversations behind closed doors. And rather than let her walk into a snare, he intervened. Not with thunder or lightning, but with something that looked like a no. A woman protected by God learns that rejection is not always from people. It's often from God himself. She didn't lose the job. God blocked it. She didn't fail the test. God redirected her. That man who hosted her. That friend who stopped calling. That leader who didn't recognize her value. All part of a divine interruption. She doesn't need to chase answers when her spirit is anchored in trust. She's learned to thank God for the prayers he didn't answer the way she wanted. She knows that delay is not denial, and closed doors are not the end. They are often the beginning of something far better. It takes faith to thank God for rejection. It takes spiritual maturity to see that a door closed today might save you years of pain tomorrow. But this woman has walked through enough to know that God doesn't take without purpose. He removes what's not his best. He strips away the counterfeit to make room for the authentic. She knows that her destiny is too important to be tied to people who don't honor it, relationships that don't nurture it, and environments that don't support it. She may not have seen the snake in the grass, but God did. So he cut the grass. And now she's standing in freedom because of a rejection she once hated. People may wonder why she's not bitter, why she didn't fight harder to stay, why she didn't beg to be chosen. But she doesn't need validation from those who can't see her worth. She's not desperate for acceptance because she's already been accepted by the one who matters most. She's not shaken by silence because she knows God speaks when the world goes quiet. She doesn't need to make sense of the rejection when she knows the character of the one doing the protecting. Sometimes God's love shows up in subtraction. He takes away not to hurt, but to heal, not to punish, but to protect. And while others mourn the loss, she senses the mercy in it. The relationship didn't fall apart. It was divinely dismantled. The plan didn't fail. It was rerouted by heaven. The connection didn't fade by chance. It was severed by grace. Because God won't let what's meant to destroy her remain in her life. He will disrupt comfort to preserve her calling. He will break what's toxic before it breaks her. And he will always choose her purpose over her temporary preferences. When she looks back, she sees it clearly. The no was never a rejection. It was a rescue. What she once grieved, she now thanks God for. What she once questioned, she now praises him over, because she sees the fruit of what didn't happen. The peace that followed the storm. The clarity that came after confusion. And she knows deep down, it wasn't just a closed door. It was the hand of God keeping her safe from what she could not see. When a woman is protected by God, one of the most powerful signs is the peace she carries in the middle of chaos. It's not the kind of peace the world gives, the surface level calm that depends on circumstances going right. It's a supernatural peace, one that remains steady even when everything around her is shaking. Evil people thrive on confusion, division, and emotional instability. They want to pull others into their drama, provoke reactions, and manipulate through fear. But this woman, covered by divine protection, refuses to be drawn into the storm. She doesn't match chaos with chaos. She doesn't fight fire with fire. She simply stands still and lets the peace of God guard her heart and mind. This kind of peace is not passivity, it's power. It's a quiet strength that speaks louder than anger. While others are shouting, blaming, or panicking, she is centered. She knows that panic never leads to purpose, and fear is never the voice of God. So she rests, not because everything is perfect, but because she trusts the one who holds it all. Her peace is her weapon. It confuses the enemy. Evil people don't know how to deal with someone who won't be rattled. They expect her to react, to break down, to lash out. But she doesn't, because her peace doesn't come from people. It comes from presence. The presence of God that dwells with her, walks with her, and speaks calm into her spirit when the world is loud. She has been through enough storms to know that survival isn't about strength alone. It's about stillness. It's about refusing to let the storm inside her just because it's raging around her. Her peace is the result of intimacy with God. She doesn't just talk about prayer, she lives in it. She doesn't just read the word, she holds on to it when life gets dark, and that word becomes an anchor. It reminds her that God is in control, even when everything feels out of control. It reminds her that her steps are ordered, her life is covered, and her soul is secure. This woman has learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of confidence. Confidence in who she is and whose she is. Confidence that God is fighting battles she doesn't even see. Confidence that the same God who delivered her before will do it again. So when evil people try to provoke her, they find no foothold. She doesn't engage in petty arguments. She doesn't entertain toxic energy. She doesn't let every insult, rumor, or attack steal her joy. She's not easily offended because she knows her identity is not up for debate. There are moments when the pressure around her intensifies, when life gets heavy and people get cruel, when situations seem unfair and confusion tries to creep in. But even then, she clings to peace, not because she feels strong, but because she knows where to run. She runs to the secret place. She runs to worship. She runs to truth. And in that place, God exchanges her worry for peace, her fear for faith, her burden for rest. She comes out of that place with a glow, with clarity, with strength. And no one can figure out how she's still standing, how she's still smiling, how she's still whole. Evil people don't understand how she maintains her composure. They don't know the prayers she's prayed in silence. They don't see the battles she's won on her knees. They don't realize that she's not standing in her own strength. She's walking in divine peace, covered by divine protection. Her calm is not ignorance, it's spiritual maturity. Her stillness is not weakness, it's strategic. It's what keeps her safe. It's what keeps her focused. It's what keeps her grounded when everything else is shifting. When a woman is protected by God, she carries a strength that often shows itself in silence, in distance, in the quiet resolve to walk away from anything that threatens her peace, her purpose, or her purity. She is not bound by fear of being alone, nor is she controlled by the opinions of others. Her identity is not wrapped up in titles, positions, or relationships that do not align with the call of God on her life. She knows that walking away is not a sign of weakness, but often the greatest evidence of divine strength. It takes courage to leave a place that once felt safe. It takes faith to let go of what is familiar when God reveals it is no longer fruitful. She understands that not every connection is covenant, and not every opportunity is ordained. Some things come into her life to test her, not to bless her. Some people are distractions dressed as destiny. And when God reveals the truth behind the facade, she listens. She doesn't wait until she's emotionally drained, spiritually dry, or mentally broken. She obeys the whisper of the Holy Spirit when it tells her, "This is not where you belong." And when she walks away, she doesn't look back. She doesn't beg to be understood. She doesn't plead to be accepted. She knows that the favor of God is better than the approval of man. There are moments when walking away is not easy. She's had to leave relationships that once brought her comfort. She's had to release friendships that no longer carried respect. She's had to step away from environments that could no longer handle her growth. But even in the pain of letting go, she found freedom. What tried to keep her bound lost its grip the moment she chose obedience over attachment. Because God doesn't just protect her from harm. He protects her from delay. Staying too long in the wrong place can cost her more than time. It can cost her clarity, energy, and even access to divine opportunities. So she has learned to move when God says move. This woman has seen what happens when you hold on to something after God has said release it. She's felt the weight of compromise. She's tasted the bitterness of staying quiet when she should have spoken. But now she's grown. She understands that her life cannot be built around trying to make others comfortable. She's not interested in fitting into spaces that require her to shrink. She would rather walk alone in truth than stay connected in deception, because she knows that her destiny is too important to be tied down by people who don't honor it. Evil people don't know what to do with a woman like this. They are used to manipulating emotions, creating confusion, and keeping people bound through guilt and obligation. But she is unmoved by pressure. She doesn't respond to fear tactics. She sees through emotional games and refuses to play them. When she walks away, it's not because she's heartless. It's because she's healed. She doesn't need closure from chaos. She doesn't need apologies from the unrepentant. She simply walks in the direction God is calling her, trusting that everything she leaves behind is part of His protection. She doesn't need a platform to prove her worth. She doesn't need a title to validate her anointing. She doesn't stay in places where her discernment is dismissed or her presence is tolerated instead of celebrated. She is led by peace, not pressure. And when the peace leaves, she leaves too. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with grace. Because walking away is not about what she's running from. It's about what she's walking toward. It's about staying in alignment with God. It's about protecting her future from anything that threatens her faith. And it's about refusing to settle when she was born to soar. A woman protected by God has the ability to see through words that sound good, but are spoken with wrong motives. She is not swayed by charm, nor is she easily impressed by compliments. She listens with her spirit, not just her ears. When someone flatters her, she doesn't just absorb the praise. She weighs it. She discerns the intent behind the words. While others may be deceived by smooth talk and eloquent speech, she understands that not every sweet word is sincere. Some words are crafted to manipulate, to gain access, to disarm. But she's not naive. She knows that the enemy doesn't always come with a threat. Sometimes he comes with a smile. This woman has grown beyond the need for constant validation. She doesn't thrive on applause, and she doesn't base her worth on the opinions of others. That's why flattery doesn't move her. She appreciates genuine encouragement, but she can tell the difference between truth and tactics. She's heard people praise her in public and criticize her in private. She's seen how some will use kind words to mask envy, how others will build you up only to control you later. So she remains guarded, not hard-hearted, but wise. She doesn't allow every voice to speak into her spirit. She knows that words have power, and she's careful about what she receives. There's a quiet confidence in her that makes her immune to empty praise. She doesn't need people to constantly remind her of her beauty, her intelligence, or her potential. She walks in the awareness of who she is in God. She's already been affirmed by her Creator. She's already heard the voice of the one who called her chosen, beloved, and set apart. That voice is louder than any flattery. That voice anchors her when people try to sway her. That voice reminds her that approval can be a trap if it comes with hidden strings. Evil people often use flattery as a tool. They know that if they can get access to her emotions, they can influence her decisions. But this woman doesn't give her heart away easily. She doesn't allow charm to bypass character. She's seen what happens when people say all the right things, but live all the wrong ways. She knows that wolves don't always growl. Sometimes they complement. And she's not afraid to walk away from someone who says what she wants to hear, but doesn't live with integrity. This kind of discernment comes from experience and from spending time in the presence of God. She has prayed for wisdom. She has asked God to sharpen her spirit. She has surrendered her ears to His truth so she won't be deceived by lies. And because of that, she sees clearly. She sees the inconsistency between words and actions. She notices when someone's flattery is excessive, when the timing of praise seems strategic, when the compliments come with an agenda. She doesn't accuse, but she remains alert. She stays watchful without becoming paranoid because her spirit is anchored in truth. She understands that people will sometimes say what they think she wants to hear to get what they want. But she's not looking for people who flatter her. She's looking for people who are faithful to truth. She values honesty over hype, consistency over compliments, real support over surface level admiration. Her standards are high, not because she's proud, but because she's protected. She knows that what enters her ears can enter her heart, so she guards both carefully. The reason she doesn't fall for flattery is not because she's cold. It's because she's covered. God has shielded her from deception by giving her clarity. She walks in light and she sees through shadows. She knows that truth often comes quiet and deception comes loud. She's not desperate for words that please. She's hungry for words that carry weight, words that reflect fruit, words that align with righteousness. A woman protected by God does not rush into decisions, conversations, or confrontations without first consulting heaven. She knows that prayer is not a ritual, it is her strategy. Before she acts, before she speaks, before she moves, she prays. She doesn't rely on her own wisdom or her emotions to guide her. She understands that clarity comes from communion with God. Evil people thrive on impulse, confusion, and hurried responses. But she is never in a rush because she knows that every moment spent in prayer is a moment of protection. She's not just asking for answers. She's seeking alignment. She wants to move when God says move, speak when He says speak, and stay silent when He tells her to wait. This woman doesn't treat prayer as a last resort. It's her first response. When someone offends her, she prays before reacting. When an opportunity arises, she prays before saying yes. When she's under pressure, she prays instead of panicking. Her strength doesn't come from her personality. It comes from her posture. She's learned how to kneel before God so she can stand before anything else. Evil people can't understand how she keeps her composure, how she seems to know things before they happen, how she avoids traps they thought were hidden. But what they don't realize is that she's been in the secret place. She's been in the presence of the one who sees all and knows all. And because she's prayed, she walks in divine instruction. There have been moments where she wanted to respond in anger, moments when betrayal stirred up her flesh, moments when she felt misunderstood and mistreated. But rather than fight with words or actions, she took it to prayer. And in that place, God gave her strategy. He showed her when to speak and when to stay quiet. He revealed people's hearts, not to make her bitter, but to make her wise. He gave her discernment, patience, and peace. What could have been an emotional explosion turned into a divine lesson because she didn't let her emotions lead. She let prayer lead. This woman doesn't make decisions based on pressure or opinions. She doesn't allow fear to push her, and she doesn't let ambition blind her. She brings everything before God. From the smallest choices to the biggest transitions, she seeks His counsel. And because she does, she avoids the traps others fall into. She doesn't waste years in toxic relationships, draining environments, or dead-end paths. Her prayers open her eyes. Her prayers shift her steps. Her prayers keep her grounded when everything around her is unstable. Evil people may try to manipulate, intimidate, or confuse, but her spirit is anchored because she's been in constant communion with her Father. There is a quiet authority about her, and it comes from her time in prayer. She doesn't need to prove herself, defend herself, or justify her decisions to everyone. She moves with confidence, not arrogance, because she knows her direction is Spirit-led. People may not understand her choices, but they'll see the fruit of them. She doesn't make noise. She makes impact. She doesn't announce her plans. She prays them through. And when she moves, things shift. When she speaks, truth cuts through deception. When she shows up, peace follows. Not because she's perfect, but because she's been prepared in prayer. Prayer is her filter. It purifies her intentions. It calms her thoughts. It silences the voices that try to cloud her vision. She doesn't trust herself more than she trusts God, which is why she submits every step to Him. She knows that the most dangerous decisions are the ones made without prayer. So she pauses, she listens, and she waits for divine instruction. Her stillness is not inactivity, it's intercession. She's not wasting time, she's receiving direction. And because she prays before she acts, she moves with precision. Evil people may try to distract her, but she stays focused because her ears are tuned to the voice of God.